Good evening. Welcome to the May 24th, 2021 meeting of the Westerville City Schools Board of Education. Please go to wcsoh.org/virtual BOE. And from that page, you can also watch the meeting via YouTube live stream. Though providing an opportunity for public comment during school board meetings is not a requirement, the Westerville City School District Board of Education believes it is an important part of its engagement with and accountability to the community. As part of our mitigation efforts to slow the spread of the coronavirus, and in the spirit of maintaining an opportunity for our public to participate in these virtual school board meetings, we are offering interested persons an opportunity to submit written public comment. During a typical Westerville City School District Board of Education meeting, there are two opportunities for individuals to address the board. While functioning under this virtual meeting environment, the opportunity to submit public comment will open when the meeting begins at approximately 6 p.m. and close shortly after each public comment section is reached on the agenda. Per board policy 0169.1, each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 5 minutes in duration. When submitting your comments through the provided forms, we ask you to please keep your comments professional, avoid the use of inappropriate language, and refrain from identifying individuals by name in the event of a complaint. You may use the links on the board's website to submit comments for consideration. All comments submitted become a matter of public record and are subject to release under Ohio law and the Federal Freedom of Information Act. As with in-person public comments made during a traditional school board meeting, members reserve the right to respond immediately or withhold comment in order to conduct appropriate research and follow up with the speaker at a later time. Thank you in advance for your understanding and cooperation. Our meeting is now called to order. And with that, Ms. Marshall, call the roll.
Mrs. Altman.
Here.
Mrs. Davidson.
Here.
Mr. Willard.
Here.
Dr. Nesta Baker.
Here.
Mr. Bell.
Here. Agenda item 3.01, our pledge of allegiance. Please join us for the pledge of
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
agenda item 4.01 to temporarily suspend board policy PO 0169.1, public participation at Board of Education meetings. May I please have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Marshall, would you please call the roll?
Dr. Nesta Baker.
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson.
Yes.
Mrs. Altman.
Yes.
Mr. Willard.
Yes.
Mr. Bell.
Yes. The motion carries. Moving on to agenda item 5, which are district highlights and recognitions. Agenda item 5.01, retirement recognitions. And Dr. Kellogg, you have an intro for us this evening.
Thank you, President Bell, members of the board. You know, every year at this time, there's two groups of great people we bid farewell to. Our seniors, and this evening our seniors are on for validation before graduation. And then the other group is our retirees. And so this evening I have the opportunity to say congratulations to our retirees from the school district this year. And just a few words before we have a video celebrating their contributions to the district. So collectively tonight, Westerville City School District is losing 1,048 years of combined experience from its licensed and classified staff. That's 1,048. Regardless of where this phase of our retirees' life journey takes them, please know how proud we are of the work you've accomplished during your time here. Your legacy will be treasured for many years to come as the students whose lives you touched and guided move on to become successful adults. In addition, you've touched the lives of your peers. Seeing the results of your work firsthand provides us with an optimistic outlook on the state of our schools, the state of our community, the state of our country, because you have touched the life of a child and have taught our future leaders well. We wish you a long, healthy, and happy retirement. And you may be leaving Westerville, but always remember, Westerville City Schools is where you belong. This year's retirees will be honored this evening with video, and each retiree has received a certificate and gift from the Board of Education that's being delivered to them. So at this time, I'd ask Jill Beck to roll the video. Just a note of thanks to Jill Beck for putting that together, and congratulations to all our retirees, and I'll let the board offer their comments if they'd like.
Well, I would like to say something. A lot of remarkable people in there, and Dr. Kellogg, you were right when you were talking about how these people have created a remarkable legacy with 1,048 years of experience that our district had the benefit of. And I wanted to say that every single one of the retirees have helped Westerville City Schools be the remarkable place that it is, that the strength, the heart of all of those people have made Westerville City Schools a beacon in many ways and for many people, children and adults alike. And I wanted to tell you that we will do our very best to carry on your legacy and to continue to strengthen this school district and continue to make it the best place it can be. So thank you for all you have done to make Westerville City Schools where everyone belongs.
I think, Nancy, we could all probably just echo all those words and just kind of keep repeating ourselves. But you know, there were several people on that screen who actually have touched my life individually, either through my children's lives or here in service on the board. And so I thought, so it's not just me, but they really have touched dozens and hundreds of lives through the years. And I'm not sure that there's a greater calling than paying it forward like these folks have done. And so I really, Nancy, I don't think I could say it better than that last part. It's up to us to continue the legacy that you all have built through decades. And thankfulness and gratitude really are too shy of a term. But I just, for me, I'm really grateful for what you all have done through the years. And the only thing I would ask is there were 1,048 hours, right? Is that what we totaled up? I would ask one of them to stay an additional 2 hours so we can make it an 1,050. Just make it very even there. Thank you, my friends, and bless you truly for a healthy, long and healthy retirement. And please stay in touch with us. We need your voice. Thank you.
So I'll go next. I would echo what my colleagues have said up here, and Westerville is the place where everyone belongs because of our educators and our staff, and I am so very grateful for all the time and energy and love that you have put in. You will be greatly missed, but now that you are retired, please come back and volunteer because we still need you, and we would love to have you. So congratulations and good luck.
Well, I suppose, it's been said, but that's a remarkable number, 1,048 years. So I guess I'm the person who likes to request applause, but this is a moment where I wish we were in a room where we could just really applaud loudly. And so I'm missing that, but that applause comes from just the genuine gratitude. And like Rick said, we know that you all have touched individual people's lives because in some cases you've touched ours. And so it's not that we are, I guess, more important than anyone else, but we know that because we felt it personally. So thank you for that. And I hope you get a nice, good retirement. Just don't be a stranger. And honestly, some of our best advocates are people who have been with the district for a really long time and retired from here and know it inside out. So we hope to see you around.
And I would just like to thank each and every one of our retirees for all of their many years of service, and more importantly, for all of the lives and all of the hearts that they have touched, the words of encouragement that you have shared to help young people really strive to be all that they can be, and then to move on and to have an impact in the world. With the many lives that you have all touched over the years, we'll never know on this side of heaven the ripple effect that you have had, not just on Westerville, but on the world. And so we say thank you for all that you have done for our community and for us. And we certainly hope that you have a terrific retirement, and that you are able to take some time to relax and to reflect. But thank you so much again for all of your years of service. Okay. Moving on, agenda item 6.01, approval of the minutes as presented of the Board of Education meeting held Monday, May the 10th, 2021. May I have a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion, corrections, or additions? Hearing none. Ms. Marshall, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Velarde,
Yes.
Mrs. Altman,
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson,
Yes.
Dr. Nussbaker,
Yes.
Mr. Bell.
Yes. That motion carries. Agenda item 7, which are reports. Agenda item 7.01, a report on school vouchers. Dr. Kellogg, would you like to introduce this for us, please?
Thank you, President Bell, members of the board. This evening, we have a presentation on school vouchers, and we have two parts to that. We'll share a video with you in a few minutes. It's about 17 minutes long. That'll provide some information. Then following that, we have a special guest with us, Bill Phillis, who's legendary in Ohio, particularly in his work with school funding through the Coalition for Equity and Adequacy. Bill has been very active in that space for years, following the DeRolf decision, working with Ohio policymakers to try and move Ohio into a better space around school funding. And lately, Westerville has become a partner with other school districts in the state that are very concerned with the current legislative efforts towards expansion of school vouchers. And so we know right now that there is a House bill placeholder that is intended to open up the door to school vouchers for any student in Ohio in a public school for any reason. And so this evening we want to spend a little time examining what the implications for that kind of voucher expansion might be, not just for Westerville, but for Ohio overall, and not just for schools, as you'll see through the video presentation and the conversation with Mr. Phillis, but really for Ohio overall. We are still in a space where we have legislators have not secured a fair funding formula. We're hopeful as we move through the budgeting process that things become more stable, more predictable. And at the same time, we are concerned with how legislators are approaching the expansion of school vouchers in Ohio moving forward. So I know Bill is with us this evening. We thank him for taking time. Very busy with the work he does. Before Bill begins and we open up for a little question and answer with the board, I'm going to ask Jill to share a video. It's about 17 minutes long, and it gives a good insight as to perspectives on how school vouchers impact all Ohioans.
For Equity and Adequacy of School Funding. In cooperation with more than 60 school districts in Ohio thus far, the Coalition is in the process of challenging the constitutionality of the EdChoice Voucher Program. The law firm of Walter Haverfield has been engaged as legal counsel for this litigation effort. The Coalition is attempting to enlist all school districts to help finance the effort. Membership in the Coalition for this effort is $2 per pupil annually. It is imperative that we win in the court of public opinion as well as the court system. To that end, we have engaged Precision New Media to help inform the public about how vouchers hurt Ohio. Dennis Willard, owner-operator of Precision New Media, is a career journalist that has written extensively about the DeRolf litigation, about vouchers, and about charter schools. He has created a PowerPoint presentation that explains why litigation is necessary. His passion for this effort and his expertise in communication is why he has been chosen to help with this effort. Dennis will now explain.
Thank you, Bill. My name is Dennis Willard, and I was a State House reporter for 23 years, the last 15 as the bureau chief for the Akron Beacon Journal, where I focused primarily on school funding, charter, and voucher schools. And in 2010, I started Precision New Media. It's a real honor to talk to you today about Vouchers Hurt Ohio. Let's start with that name. We're making a value statement with our name. Our opponents like to talk about choice. They say the money should follow the student. What we want to do is turn that narrative on its head. We want people, every time they mention us, to make a value statement. Vouchers Hurt Ohio. Reporters, when they write about us or report about us in TV and radio, will have to use that name, Vouchers Hurt Ohio. We want to permeate the consciousness of Ohioans with our name, Vouchers Hurt Ohio. We want to pursue that idea. Vouchers hurt our communities. Vouchers hurt local businesses. Vouchers hurt parents. Vouchers hurt educators. Vouchers hurt us all. And most critically, vouchers hurt our students, our young people, the very people that you became professional educators to help. Here's our mission statement. Vouchers Hurt Ohio is a growing coalition of public school districts that have come together to sue the state over the unconstitutional and harmful private school voucher program. EdChoice began as a pilot program. Since fiscal year 2008, however, it has grown from $42 million to $350 million this fiscal year. And on average, it's increasing by about $25 million a year. When the voucher program was first unveiled, it was promoted as a way to help impoverished families trapped in poor performing districts. And we know that's not true. The fact is, it's a way to reimburse families already committed to placing their children in private schools. The reality, vouchers have become a refund and a rebate program, draining precious dollars from your schools. There's a complete lack of accountability, and they're highly unregulated. Look what's happened over the years. Vouchers started at $1,229 per pupil, and now that has increased to $6,512. Public school funding has remained flat, and you can see around 2009, 2010, that voucher money per student exceeded the amount of money the state was spending on public school children. Nick Pittner, the lead attorney in the DeRolf school funding case, likes to compare this to two gas cans, one labeled local and one labeled state. Each can contains 5 gallons of regular unleaded gas. Now, if you fill your gas tank with 5 gallons from each can, you're going to have 10 gallons in the tank. But if someone steals 7 gallons of gas from your tank overnight, you're going to be left with 3 gallons. And more importantly, you don't really care where that gas came from or left. The fact is you have 3 gallons left when you need all 10 to make your rounds. You were robbed, and our public school children are being robbed too. Right now they're talking about possibly, and I don't think this will happen because it will cause them too many problems, putting the voucher funding program in a separate line item in the state budget. Well, even if they do, keep in mind every dollar in that line item is money they are robbing from the public school system. Let's look at one district and its experience. Cleveland Heights, University Heights is a majority minority enrollment district. It has 5,111 students, and 4 of every 5 are economically disadvantaged. So this is a district really where the state should be helping, not harming. Unfortunately, the state deducts $6,000 for every high school student taking a voucher there. It also deducts $4,650 for K through 8 vouchers. Now, this is what the Cleveland Heights University Heights School Board president wrote in a letter to the editor to Cleveland.com. Under current state law, 100% of the voucher cost for a new student is paid for by our school district without any contribution from the state. The reason? The state's capped funding to CHUH. It has not capped funding for private vouchers. Look at what has happened to this district in the past 3 years. 2 years ago, the district lost $4 million as 1 in 7 students took a voucher. A year later, they lost $7 million as 1 in 5 students took a voucher. And this year, they'll lose $9 million as 1 of every 4 students takes a voucher. Now, what's happening here is there's a private school in the district that is recruiting students from the East Coast and asking them to move to Ohio and enroll in the private school in this district. What we're seeing is a district losing money to out-of-state students who never had any intention of living in the district, stepping foot in a Cleveland Heights University Heights building, and yet the ratio is now up to 1 in every 4 students in this district taking a private voucher. This isn't unusual. An analysis last year by News 5 in Cleveland found that nearly 2/3 of voucher recipients had not been previously students in the public school district. They were private school students who had not received state funding for their tuitions. They were looking for reimbursements, and now they're getting them. So, Cleveland Heights University Heights losing $9 million a year to vouchers. They had to cut 24 teachers and educators, and this was after going back to voters multiple times and passing levies. The levies that were passed, essentially going to voucher programs. For you, this means that over the course of a single student's lifetime, you're going to lose $64,500. For a district with 100 voucher students, you're going to lose $6.45 million over the lifetime of those students. Now, we can win. There's precedent for us winning. Just take a look at the DeRolf case. In that case, we established the coalition, we assessed school districts, and that helped pay for the legal and public relations efforts. In July 1994, Perry County Judge Linton Lewis ruled our funding system for schools was unconstitutional, and 3 years later, the Supreme Court upheld Linton Lewis's decision. You can argue whether or not the system is now constitutional, the funding system, but we know that there were very positive things that came out of the DeRolf case. First and foremost, the creation of the Ohio Schools Facility Commission. Prior to the case, from 1956 to 1992, the state was involved in a highly inefficient and ineffective school building program with a small number of local school districts. After DeRolf, we saw the School Facilities Commission created. We've witnessed 1,200 new public school buildings being built across the state and a $23 billion investment in schools. We also saw something else happen. The percentage of the general revenue fund dedicated to K-12 funding went from 34% at the time of the lawsuit to 40% after the Supreme Court ruling occurred. Unfortunately, charters and vouchers have siphoned off a lot of that increase. What's next? The future of vouchers. We know Ohio is the Wild West of vouchers. Lawmakers want to expand the program to 413 eligible districts. We have a Senate President, Matt Huffman, who is very pro-voucher, and they keep moving the marker. We believe that they won't be satisfied until every school district in Ohio is eligible for the voucher program. And we're not alone in this battle. Since January 1st, more than a dozen bills have been introduced in state houses across the country to initiate or expand voucher programs. The E&A Coalition is now at 200 plus school districts. Vouchers Hurt Ohio has grown to 60 plus school districts. Many districts are going to their boards right now with resolutions, so we're going to be growing a lot more over the coming weeks. We're also not alone in this on a national level. This group, Public Funds, Public Schools, is going to help us with legal support and also help us identify experts and witnesses when we go to trial. In Tennessee, they've been very active, and in February, the Tennessee Supreme Court rejected the implementation of the voucher program there, calling it unconstitutional. So you can see that we're winning in places around the country, and we're going to win here in Ohio as well. How do we do that? Well, we have a two-pronged approach. We're going to win in the court of law, and we're going to win in the court of public opinion. In the court of law, as Bill mentioned, we have retained Walter Haverfield. It's a top 10 Cleveland law firm with 90 attorneys and offices in Cleveland, Columbus, Mayfield Heights, and Avon. They right now are looking at the issues that include the unconstitutional voucher program, the unlawful diversion of local tax revenues, religious issues, the thorough and efficient clause in the Ohio Constitution, the over-reliance on property tax, and equal protection. In the court of public opinion, we are going to be very aggressive, starting with message discipline. We're going to repeat again and again, vouchers hurt Ohio, hurt students, hurt educators, hurt parents, hurt all of us. We are also prepared to help you with this message discipline. We want everyone singing out of the same hymnal. So we are preparing talking points, one-pagers. I'm here to help you with prep and coaching if you want to talk to your local media, local organizations, leaders in your community. If you're being interviewed, I'm here as a resource for you. And we're also going to put together frequently asked questions so that we're answering questions the same way in every part of the state. We'll have a very aggressive online presence. We have a website we launched, www.vouchershurtohio.com. There you can get a lot of information, including the list of districts that have joined Vouchers Hurt Ohio already. Every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m., we are sending out an email updating everyone on the progress of the campaign. Hopefully you're receiving this email. If you are not, it's very easy to sign up. You can go to vouchershurtohio.com, click the sign up button. You'll see a drop-down image like this, and all you have to do is click that blue box, sign up for emails. We can get your information and start getting you on the Tuesday email list. Also, that list, if someone you know wants to be on our email list, please send them to the website. On our social media platforms, we want to amplify our message, raise up school districts that have joined, share news stories and images that demonstrate just how badly vouchers are hurting Ohio, share earned media stories about VHO, and we're going to post press releases and drive traffic to our website there. Here is an image of our Facebook page, our Twitter page, and our Instagram. And as you can see, they're all branded the same. These are eye-catching share images that we're going to produce and share on a regular basis. We're going to try to make sure that we're getting a lot of facts out there to educate and inform the public about why vouchers hurt Ohio. We're also going to create short animated videos as well. Here's an example of one. On the earned media front, we've already had a lot of success in getting earned media as we stand up the campaign. Here's just some examples of stories that have appeared in the Columbus Dispatch, Cleveland.com, NPR Radio. Down in the bottom corner, when we hired the Walter Haverfield law firm, we put out a press release. That story was picked up by more than 30 medium and major metro papers across the state. As I mentioned, I was in the newspaper business for a long time. I still have a lot of contacts and friends who are editors, editorial page editors, reporters. I speak to them on a daily, many of them on a daily basis, and they are very interested in the progress of Vouchers Heard Ohio. We're also going to highlight districts like yours that have joined as we go. So how do you join? Well, it's pretty simple. You take this resolution to your school board and have them pass it, and then you pay Vouchers Heard Ohio $2 per pupil per year based on your enrollment, and we have this resolution available for you. If you do have any more questions about joining Vouchers Heard Ohio, please contact Bill Phillis. Here is his phone number and email address. I do want to thank you once again for this opportunity to make this presentation to you today. I hope you'll take very seriously how vouchers are harming our students, undermining our public school system, and join us in this lawsuit. We believe we will be successful, and we hope that you're there with us. Thank you so much.
So thank you, board, for watching the video. Some good information there about vouchers in Ohio. Bill, thank you for being here this evening. I thought maybe just to kind of get the conversation going a little bit, maybe you might provide the board a little bit of update. Anything you think they need to be aware of in current circumstances?
Well, first of all, now, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Well, thank you so much for allowing me to be with you tonight. I want to thank Dr. Kellogg for inviting me to participate. Also, I want to thank President Bell for being a member of the steering committee of the coalition, and Rick Villardo being an ex officio member of the steering committee. So we really appreciate the support of the Westerville board. And the fact that you have joined the effort is great. A little update, we have more than 70 districts now that are part of the Vouchers Heard Ohio, a portion of our operation. We have another 140 more districts that are members of the coalition, and of course that helps the effort as well. Dr. Kellogg mentioned, I think, House Bill 290, that Voucher Expansion bill. It probably won't become law at this point, but it has that potential of becoming law. That bill would provide a voucher for every kid. Now, when you think about that, there are 150,000 non-public kids that their parents are paying tuition, and there are 80,000 homeschoolers, and they want to expand this program to allow homeschoolers and tutors and that sort of thing that parents could hire. And when you add up just the tuition students in private schools today and the homeschoolers, it would cost Ohio more than $750 million just to expand into those markets, we might say. So as Dennis pointed out on the video, in the case of Cleveland Heights, University Heights, they're educating a lot of kids through the voucher program who've never lived in Ohio before and have just moved into the district. So this is not going to be a matter of us just having kids move out of our districts into private schools. It also involves those that are already in private schools and those that could come under this law by way of homeschooling. So this is a real threat to public education. Now, there's I'm getting some background music here somewhere. I don't know where it's even coming from. Maybe it's coming from Alexa. Alexa, stop. Yeah, it was coming from Alexa, and I didn't even ask her to join us. Anyway, if we just add today, what in fiscal year 2021, if we just today add up how much money is going from the state of Ohio to first vouchers and charters, and secondly to the direct funding of private schools, that would accumulate to $1.6 billion. Remember that, $1.6 billion. Well, the state of Ohio provides $8.1 billion this year for K-12 education, $8.1 billion. But right now, over $1.6 billion, and you can figure the percentage there, is going to vouchers and charters, and of course, in the budget bill, the President of the Senate is talking about greatly expanding the voucher program. There are a lot of lobbyists from that school choice program that are lobbying for an increase of vouchers at the high school level from $6,000 to $8,000. So you better believe that there's going to be an expansion of the voucher eligibility, as well as an expansion or an increase in the voucher per pupil voucher program. So this is really about a real threat to public education. That's my real concern is it's a threat to the public system. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from and why I'm involved in this particular effort. So be glad to respond to any questions or whatever President Bell, whatever you wish to, however, or Dr. Kellogg, wherever you wish this to go.
Okay, board members, questions or comments that you may have for Mr. Phillips?
Well, I really appreciate your being here. Thank you so much for spending the time with us tonight, and thank you for the decades of service you have given to public education. I can think of no one who is a more stalwart defender of public education, arguably one of the greatest institutions that this country has. So thank you on the short term for being with us, and thank you overall for your many, many years of work. I am wondering, though, why is the push increasing so much now, the push for vouchers? We're seeing it here, we're seeing it across the country, this very much intensified legislative push to get vouchers universally implemented across the state, across the country. Why now?
I'm not sure I know the answer, but I know some of the people that are behind the movement. Of course, this movement really started back in the 1950s with that economist Milton Friedman, where he came out and said, well, government has no business being in operating education. The only role of government in education, in his view, was to provide some money, and the money would go to each parent, and they would spend the money wherever they could. People like Reed Hastings with the Netflix, this person is he's against public school boards. He's against public districts. The Fordham Foundation is another group. They just recently held a seminar on the elimination of school boundaries, and the idea there was, we don't need school districts. We just need to put the money out to parents, and they can go buy their education in any school district or any private school or charter school, or hire Uncle Joe to do their education. The Koch brothers are a big factor in this. Most of us have heard of the Koch brothers. The American Legislative Exchange Council is involved in anti-public school activities. Now, why they're doing this, I don't know, but they're there's a lot of those kind of organizations are really pushing for this. And the bottom line is that to get rid of boards of education, get rid of teachers unions, get rid of school districts, and just have government provide some money for kids to buy some education wherever they can get it. In the state of West Virginia, just recently they passed a bill, a voucher bill that would allow homeschooling, and the Ohio sponsors of that House Bill 290 said, we need to look to West Virginia for our intel with regard to this whole matter. And of course, they're thinking, and they would be thinking, well, homeschooling or paying for vouchers to parents who already are now paying their own tuition into the private system.
So you did not say this, but I'm going to. I think in many ways it's a function of follow the money. You hear an awful lot about vouchers and an awful lot of verbiage coming out trying to convince people that it's a good idea, landing on the idea that every parent should have that right to choose. You use an analogy that I think is very, very helpful. When we're talking about major public institutions, the institutions that really keep our communities, our state, our country functioning well. You have public education, of course, and that's what we're talking about. But you talk about police and fire and infrastructure, and applying the same rhetoric that's applied by a lot of voucher lobbyists to the police, to fire, saying, I think I want the share of my taxes that go to fire protection. I want to take that myself and go hire my own private fire department to take care of my particular house. That's not going to work well. Or we might want to say, I'm going to take my portion of taxes that goes to fixing and repairing the interstates, and I want to build my own roads with that. I'm not going to let anybody else on my roads either, for that matter. So when we talk about public institutions, somewhere along the line, we've lost what that means. And your analogies, I think, are very helpful, and I've started to use a lot of those in my conversation. When I think about the impact on Westerville, I often find that people in districts like Westerville really don't know the damage that vouchers are doing to us and to districts like us. The millions of dollars that we have lost and that we will continue to lose if the voucher movement isn't stopped in its tracks and actually reversed if possible. But as I think about what we pay to subsidize the voucher movement in this particular school district, I think about that in terms of the tax levies we put on the ballot and the amount of millage that we end up putting, because, as you say, we need all the gas in the can. So, when I look at vouchers and the financial impact on Westerville City Schools and school districts like Westerville, I see bleeding, as we say, a draining away of the resources that are necessary. And as those resources drain away, we actually lose confidence from our electorate. We lose confidence in the public schools, in this public institution. So I think it's extraordinarily important that we think about what districts like ours think about when they think about vouchers. Because, like you said, the idea initially was help people escape failing schools. Well, that's clearly not what it's about, or Westerville wouldn't be losing any students, any money, vouchers. So then we say, well, it's really about school choice and allowing money to follow the student. No, it's really not, because that is the death of public education. Public education. So I want to thank you for that. That wasn't a question, that was a rant. We have for years steadfastly opposed vouchers and charters from the board table here. Our voices alone were not enough. It's imperative that we join with you, as we have, to come together as multiple districts in this state to make a stand legally to stop this, to protect public education, to protect our taxpayers, to protect our educators, our students, and our families. Again, thanks, Bill, for being here, and I'll quit ranting now.
Well, thank you, and just amen to all what you said.
So, Bill, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise. A couple of things that I took away from the video and just listening to this going on for the past couple of years. The school districts are definitely stronger together, all of us. And you talked about in the video, there was the campaign piece for communities. And I think we have roughly 650 school districts in the state of Ohio. Is that true?
Yeah, 612 or so.
Okay, so 200 school districts have joined on. What can we do to help gather other school districts? What as board members can we do?
Well, I think you reach out to board members that you know in other districts and talk to them.
And ask them to reach out. Yeah, okay.
I mean, this is a board member to board member. I think that would be the most advantageous approach. We are doing all that we can do. Dennis Willard and I have made live presentations, our Zoom presentations, live, not the video presentation, but we've made that to at least half of the superintendents in the state of Ohio. And I think we're going to have with fiscal year 2022 coming on, we're going to have a lot more districts, involved in this. But this is a district by district decision, and frankly, some boards of education really are not either tuned in to the implications, the ramifications, the results of this expansion of vouchers, or maybe don't think it's going to affect them. But when they open it up to homeschooling, when they open it up to the people that are already paying tuition and so forth, then it may be too late by that time, because the momentum will be built, and I'm afraid that there's a point of no return here at some point. Mm-hmm. But anything you can do to reach out to fellow board members across the state or in the community. Rick Villardo is a member of that Franklin County Board Members Alliance, and is, I think, he's an ex officio member of the steering committee, and I think he's working on, or at least I think the Franklin County Alliance has been talking about, getting people involved in this whole effort. Obviously, the COVID crisis slowed down our efforts. Now that maybe we're past part of that, we can, make up for the slowdown. But we are going to be advertising. In fact, we will be sending out letters to all 700 school districts. When I say 700 boards of education, the ESCs and the joint vocational boards, we're going to be sending out, I think, 722 invitations here in June for fiscal year 2022, asking them to join. And so anything that any of you board members can say to your colleagues across the state, and I know many of you have connections through Ohio School Boards Association, but we really need your support, and I think Westerville sent a strong statement to Franklin County when the board joined this effort. I don't have any magic bullet, but those are some thoughts.
Okay, thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
Bill, I won't say a lot because you and I are in a bunch of meetings together, and so and Dennis, really just a tremendous video. Bill's correct. I serve as an ex officio. I'm now president of the Franklin County School Board Member Alliance, and we have school board members from around 270 Circle Freeway and all of that. And when I was elected president this year, we made it one of our primary goals to try and get out into as many school districts as we can. So Mrs. Davidson is really right on target with that question. Just how can we move the ball forward? And for me, I'm really, it's okay. I'm not a very smart person. I just like to make it just like very clear, with all due respect to Milton Freeman. The Ohio Constitution says that you will provide, that the legislator will provide a thorough and efficient public school system. So whatever Milton Friedman believes on the side, that's fine for what he believes. But the Constitution says that will be provided a thorough and efficient public school system. And then finally, Dennis begins that video, I think, very well. It's a value statement. Vouchers hurt Ohio. But what I want to make very clear is that this is not a value statement regarding people and those who choose non-public schools. It is a value statement that simply says a misuse of publicly voted funds for private and voucher education is disingenuous at best. And so we are not about disparaging other persons' choices. What we are about is saying if money was voted for the public school system and you divert millions of dollars to other educational opportunities, then the people in our district who vote, I vote for this Westerville City School District, are being taken advantage of. And that is inappropriate. And you're going to hear in a few minutes, Bill, I know we can't keep you too long and other stuff on the agenda, but you're going to hear in a few minutes our treasurer, Ms. Marshall, present a report updating 5-year forecasts. And one of the things she's going to talk about is here are the millions of dollars that we lose every year because we're a cap district. And so I think the Cleveland Heights, University Heights is a great example. I just encourage us to speak to people in other districts. And I talk too much about this as it is. Just very much a believer that we cannot continue to allow publicly voted dollars to be taken and used for private usage.
That's exactly right. I'm on 3 private boards, and a children's home, a camp, a university, and I don't want public money for those. Those are private institutions that were formed not by the government, but by private individuals for private purposes. And I'm not asking for public money. And if I want to send my kids to a private institution, that's my business. But if I do, then I should be willing to pay the freight. And as was said before, you know, the Constitution is very clear. The General Assembly shall secure by taxation or otherwise a thorough and efficient system of common schools throughout the state. The common school system is all about the public good. It's not about private interests. It's about the public good.
Yeah, Mr. Phillips, I want to thank you also for being here. And this may be a question that maybe Dr. Kellogg or someone else wants to chime in on, but for folks who are kind of just stepping into this space and maybe are sort of new to this I guess, this issue here in Ohio. You know, one of the things that is often said and within the video is that regulation is not the same, right, for public schools as it is for many of the schools that are then receiving these funds through the voucher program. And just, I know there are 1,000 ways we could talk about that, but Bill or Dr. Kellogg, would you like to point out some of the ways in which these publicly voted funds are then moving to institutions that are not regulated in the same way that public institutions are regulated?
Well, I could begin with that. But I was on a call this afternoon with the Ohio Department of Education, trying to get some public records out of them, and the question came up: what do you, as an institution, as a state representative of education, what do you look for when you monitor or approve a school for vouchers, a private school for voucher usage? One is, do they have fire regulations? Secondly, do they have a principal? And there was one other, or do you have a curriculum? Well, really, a school has to have a principal. A school needs a fire regulations and needs a curriculum. So, really any private school qualifies for vouchers if they want them. So, there's just and so I asked about what do you as a Department of Education do about the monitoring the finances, or does the auditor monitor the finances of the private institution? Well, no, absolutely not. They could use the money to buy off-road vehicles. They could use the money for any purpose, and it wouldn't be the public's business what they do with it. But of course, it's the public taxpayers that pay in the freight.
I think the other thing I'd add to that is access. And the notion, and I know that this district, even previous to me, there was some discussion. There was an author, I've forgotten the book title, but the general piece about, and public schools are public. You show up in our community, you live here, you reside here, you have a right to public education, and we have an obligation to instruct you regardless of whatever circumstances. And now we're talking about our private voucher system, in which the organizations that are accepting the money are able to make a determination of who they're going to serve and who they're not going to serve. And I think that's a fundamental difference. Throw into their accountability models, any accountability models, where we're really comparing apples to oranges in terms of the needs of the students. Add to that, as Bill's pointed out, there's only so much money in the pot for education. So this is not really about additional money. This is about the same pot of money being divided amongst more entities, which means there's going to be loss to some places, and in public schools that's the case. So fewer resources in your public school system to address the needs of students who are with you, may not be able to access some of these other opportunities, becomes part of that piece of the puzzle as well. And then the lack of accountability, not just in terms of how they operate, but in terms of student outcomes, I think are critical pieces. There's just the trickle-down effect. Our good friend Mike Collins, former board member, former state board member, who now is involved in this, he and I were talking a little bit today. And Bill, I know you've talked to Mike as well. Mike was sharing with me, he now has his office space over with the Retired Teachers Association. Well, do the math. If you start losing public school students, you're going to lose public school teachers. You start losing public school teachers, you start losing payment in the retirement system, which is built around that system helping pay back or pay forward those that have retired, and the financial implications for that system as a ripple effect to how this thing all plays out. We already provide services to private school students through transportation, special education, and other areas. So it's not that we reject any obligation to other systems. We accept those obligations. But I think Mr. Villardo's summary of the constitutionality of this, our voters voted on operating levies to operate the public schools. They need to be keenly aware that some of that money that they've allocated to us is being pulled here and sent elsewhere for private entities that they don't have any control over. They don't get to elect who's running them, the boards of education, who hire people like myself and Ms. Marshall to help run the school district. So there's just a lot of flaws in the model, and even the language over purpose has shifted from school choice to parent choice to family choice to the money follows the kid. And all of that is intended to create the messaging about what it's about and how that replicates. So I love our private school colleagues. I love our families that choose to homeschool. I love all of those people out there working to educate our children. But I don't like a system that's intended on creating winners and losers and really doesn't pass the sniff test for constitutionality. That's bottom line for me. So, and I appreciate Bill's work and this board's efforts to step forward and put that out there.
Well, thank you both for talking that through for just a minute, because I think it's easy to, well, we can throw around words like less regulation or unregulated, but it's helpful to have people begin to really understand what that means when the public money is moving into these spaces where there just isn't the same kind of oversight, if there's any at all. And I guess my last question would be to Ms. Marshall to ask, is there any oversight to your work?
I thought I unmuted. Yeah, plenty of oversight to what we do in the school system here. I do think John made an important point here. I don't think our general public understands the way the voucher system works. If you see the ads for some of the schools, it's free education, doesn't cost you anything, it's all free. Well, it's not really free. So this is a significant cost to our local taxpayers. Well, when we go over the forecast, you'll see that we lose about $11.5 million to the cap that's on the school funding formula. We lose about $8 million, over $8 million a year to either scholarships or charter schools. None of that was voted by our taxpayers. And so every penny that goes out is being paid for by our local dollars. And I don't think that the general public really understands that. Not many people look into it. But.
Well, thank you for that. And even doing something like a 5-year forecast, right, is something that we have to do. And many of these entities don't. That's part of this process of being in the public system and having that oversight. So, all right, thank you.
Yes, I think it's very important for the members of our community to understand that the rules are different in many regards for private and charter schools than they are for public schools, beginning with the ability to select who they admit and who they do not. Many advertise that they are free, but they do not have to be. So they don't have to limit their tuition to the amount of a voucher that a family or a student brings. And they are then able to charge more. And if that student that family does not cover the additional expense, they are able to hold that student's educational records essentially hostage until that fee is paid, until those dollars are covered. And that's affecting many students across the state of Ohio. So I think one of the most important points for our community to understand is it's not a level playing field. It's not an apples to apples comparison at all. Bill, Mr. Phillips, could you share with us? I've heard we've mentioned it a couple of times here. I want to make sure that we help people understand. Could you summarize for us what it means to provide a thorough and efficient education?
Well, my definition is going back to the words thorough. Thorough means complete. It means, in fact, when this was put in the Constitution in 1851, the dictionary definition of thorough was perfect. The delegates to that Constitutional Convention were looking not for just a system of education, but they were looking for a perfect system, a complete system, an effective system. Now, unfortunately, the state has had some trouble figuring out that it costs money to have a thorough and efficient system. And for 170 years, the state has not been able to and has refused to put forward the amount of money that's necessary for a thorough, complete, effective, adequate, equitable system of school funding and thus equal educational opportunity across the state. But the bottom line of all this is that the Constitution requires a high level, a high quality educational opportunity for all kids, and the state has refused to provide that. And in one sense, vouchers are an easy way out for the state. They don't have to pay for the full freight, and so that's one of the some legislators are thinking, well, this is a voucher here is $6,000-8,000, and it costs maybe $10,000 or $12,000 for the public system on the average. This is a cheap way out. Well, that's a flawed way of thinking. We either take care of kids on the front end of life, or we take care of them on the other end of life, in terms of welfare benefits, in terms of prisons, in terms of other safety net things. Thorough and efficient has to do with high quality for everybody. Rural kids, urban kids, suburban kids, every kid. High quality for everybody. That's what the Constitution requires. And when I hear a legislator say, well, money follows the kid, the money should follow the student, well, that says to me that legislator really doesn't understand, maybe has never read Article 6, Section 2 of the Constitution, which says the General Assembly shall make such provisions by taxation or otherwise as will secure a thorough and efficient system of common schools throughout the state. It's just unfortunate that many legislators don't understand that very simple concept. The only place in the Constitution that the state is required to provide taxation for any service is in Article 6, Section 2, and that has to do with the public common school system.
Okay, thank you so much for all of your work over the years, the work you're continuing to do. I look forward to joining the team and partnering with you as we move forward with this issue.
And I'm just grateful for your willingness to be a part of this steering committee. Thank you so much, President Bell.
Yes, sir. Thank you again for joining us this evening, and we look forward to having you back in the future as we continue to discuss this issue that affects all of our kids in all of our schools.
Be my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, moving on in our agenda to agenda item 8.01, public comments. There are none. We've not received any. Moving on to agenda item 9.01, the 5-year forecast. Ms. Marshall, would you like to share with us about the 5-year forecast?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Marshall, would you please share with us the 5-year forecast?
Thank you, President Bell, members of the board. I'm going to share my screen. All right. So tonight we are going over the May forecast. So this is an update from November. So the purpose of the forecast, I like to remind everyone, is a long-range planning tool. So we use it in district planning, and it serves as the basis for determining the district's ability to sign the 412 certificate. It also provides a method for the Department of Education to kind of keep track of us and the state auditor and our finances and how we're doing. So we have to file a 5-year projection no later than November 30th of each year. So we did that last November. And so then we have to provide an update by May 31st, which is what we're doing tonight. So we have to include the fiscal year and the ensuing 4 fiscal years as projections, the current fiscal years, which is fiscal year 21. And we also include 3 years of actual history information just for historical purposes. I like to look at the forecast in 3 separate parts. I like to look at revenues, expenditures, and fund balances and reserves. And you can see those broken out by the lines there. Looking at challenges of our current forecast, not a lot of change from November's forecast. We're still concerned about state funding. We are in the middle of a new biennium budget process that hopefully will conclude by June 30th. You never know with the legislature. We're also legislative changes could affect the forecast. Property tax collections with the current times right now are always uncertain. And federal funding could also affect the outcome of this forecast. And I like to remind everybody that projections are based on the information that we have available today and may very well change going forward. Just a reminder about the Student Wellness and Success Fund. So this was introduced in the current biennium, starting with fiscal year 20. And these are the amounts that we received in fiscal year 20 and then the increase for fiscal year 21. Governor DeWine has made several statements affirming his hope that these funds will continue during his term as governor. So we have anticipated this funding to continue through at least 2023 in this forecast. We also have several different opportunities with the Esser federal funds. So Esser 1 and 2 were part of the CARES Act that was approved by the federal government. Esser 1 was a $2 million allocation. That grant period runs March 13th, 2020 through September 30th of 2022. Esser 2 is a $9.5 million allocation. That grant period's March 13th through 2020 through September 30th, 2023. As you can see, they've backdated these, even though, so like the Esser 2 allocation just became available this year, but they're backdating it back to the beginning of the pandemic. And then Esser 3 is an allocation of $23.7 million, and that grant period ends September 30th of 24. Esser funds were approved by the federal government in response to COVID-19, the pandemic, and is meant to help school districts continue to educate students in person and respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. So for this forecast, we have portions of Esser 1 and Esser 2 that have been included to reduce expenditures. So Esser is not part of the general fund. It's accounted for in a separate restricted fund. And so we have portions of Esser 1 and Esser 2 that we've taken expenditures out of the general fund and placed them in the Esser funds to help us offset some revenue losses that we're seeing due to the pandemic. Esser 3, actually the grant application just got released here recently, and we are in the planning stages for Esser 3, and so there's been no plan developed so far. And once we have that, we'll see how that affects, if at all, the 5-year forecast. But at this time, it's not included in this forecast. So looking at our revenues, the main impacts here for compared to previous forecasts is we did have the issue 8 that provides for additional property taxes that begin collections in calendar year 2021. So that's a half year in fiscal year 21, full year starts in fiscal year 22. And then we have some changes in state funding assumptions over the November forecast. When we look at where we ended in fiscal year 20 with our percentage, we received about 61% of our revenue from local property taxes. This forecast estimates that to be about 66% in the last year of the forecast, which is fiscal year 25. Looking at local property taxes, we're projecting to receive about 63% of our total revenues in fiscal year 21 from local property taxes. Our collection rate usually runs about 99%. We forecasted in November for that to run about 98%. We are collecting this year around 98.6%. For fiscal years 22, we've estimated 98.6%, and then for 23 through 25, we estimate that our collections will go back up to around 99%. And just a reminder, we do have the operating levy in there. I've highlighted the yellow circle. So half a year collection in fiscal year 21, and then a full year in fiscal year 22. Tangible personal property taxes are 2% of total revenues, and we just anticipate slight increases from growth in the new operating levy. State foundation and reimbursements. So this forecast includes 3 separate biennium budgets. So we're in the second year of the first biennium budget of this forecast. The legislature is planning for the next biennium budget, which will cover fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23. And then we also have fiscal year 24 and fiscal year 25. That's part of the third biennium budget that's part of this forecast. State aid for the current biennium budget was projected to be at FY19 levels. Due to the COVID pandemic, that was reduced even further with the governor making cuts back in May of 2020, and some of those cuts continued into the current fiscal year. So our state aid that was estimated to be based on FY19 levels. FY19 levels, that was the last time we actually had a funding formula in the state for schools, and about 18% of districts were actually on the funding formula at that time. So for Westerville, we were already underfunded by about $11.5 million due to the cap that was in place. So already capped by the $11.5 million. Coming into fiscal year 20, we saw another reduction of about $2.8 million from the governor. They restored a portion of that, about $1.5 million of that cut. So we're still down overall from where we were in FY19. Property tax allocations are just reimbursements and direct payments from the state for property tax rollback and homestead reimbursements. Those estimates follow our property taxes as a percentage. And this forecast does assume that the allocation will remain exempt from cuts. So if we compare what we were projecting in November for state funding to the current forecast, you can see that we've increased our assumptions. So FY19 is the bottom bar there, what we actually received. So November is the light blue, and the current forecast is the dark blue. So we were just under 45 million in FY19. In FY20, that drops down to about 42 million. And projecting going forward, in the light blue in November, we were projecting that to remain at the FY20 reduced levels. The governor came back in and restored a portion of those cuts up to just under the 44 million in the current fiscal year FY21. And so now we're taking the FY21 number and projecting that out going forward through 25. So that's a significant impact on the forecast from November. So, and that's all subject to the budget process, the state budget process. So House Bill 110 is the budget bill for fiscal years 22 and 23. That was, the governor introduced his budget. The House has approved the substitute House Bill 110, that's where it's at now. And it has been sent to the Senate. The Senate is doing their thing, and they will at some point vote on a plan, and it will eventually get to conference committee. And after it goes through conference committee, it'll have to be voted back again by the House and the Senate, and will eventually be signed by the governor, hopefully no later than June 30th. So the last time we had a biennium budget, they did not get it done by June 30th. And so they extended it for 17 days past the fiscal year. So we're hoping that doesn't happen again, and we do know what's going on before the end of the fiscal year. All other revenues includes payment in lieu of taxes, Board of Revision settlements, interest revenue, tuition, student fees, and other miscellaneous receipts. We do anticipate some decreases. Interest rates have decreased significantly due to the pandemic. They've fallen drastically. Rent revenue has also decreased significantly due to the pandemic. Our buildings have been closed. We haven't been renting them out. Tuition was charged at 50% while we were in a blended model of instruction this year. And also while we were in remote, there was no charge for all-day kindergarten tuition for those days. And so that's, our tuition overall has been reduced significantly. We also received one-time receipts from the Bureau of Workers' Comp refunds. They gave like a $2.5 million give back to help offset revenue losses as part of the pandemic that we saw that. We don't anticipate that we will see that going forward based on the communication from when we last received that receipt from the pandemic. When we talk about revenue uncertainty, there's a lot of that with state funding. The cuts were made in FY20 and partial cuts extended into FY22. Like I mentioned, we have 2 new biennium budgets after the current biennium budget in this forecast. Property values, we are seeing, significant increases in property values currently. That could change in the future. Property tax collections, we continue to monitor that. Delinquencies aren't as high as what we anticipated they would be with the pandemic, but that could be delayed. We're still monitoring that. The economy, and then legislative changes, just like the voucher expansion. There's been different bills introduced to reduce property tax collections to school districts that we've also been following in an effort to help businesses. They are looking at cutting property taxes due for taxes already levied, that sort of thing. Looking at expenditures, not a lot of change here from the November forecast. So the forecast includes opening the new elementary in fiscal year 23 and the new middle school in fiscal year 24. Esser 2 is an addition to this forecast. We didn't know about that back in last November. So we do have Esser 2 funds helping to reduce some of our salaries and benefits expenses for the fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23. And this is just a snapshot of our actual fiscal year 2020 percentage breakdown by expenditures and what we're projecting in fiscal year 25. Not a lot of change there. Looking at our personnel costs, it includes about 78% of our total expenditures. Just a reminder that we did move the mine van drivers that were once paid for out of the CCO. We moved those into the district in fiscal year 20. The current fiscal year includes adding 12.4 certified FTE and one-time costs for virtual student success coaches. Fiscal years 22 through 25 includes adding 10 certified FTE and one and a half classified FTE annually for growth. We've also included additional staff for the new elementary school in 23 and the new middle school in 24. We are bringing the personnel costs for mental health staff. They were shifted to the student wellness and success funds during fiscal year 20, and this forecast has them coming back in fiscal year 23 or 24, sorry. In fiscal year 23, personnel services are inflated by about $4.5 million because we have a 27th pay period in the fiscal year. And then Esser 1 funds provided $2 million, and Esser 2 provided $6 million in funding for us to reduce expenditures that help us offset the revenue loss.
Hey, Nicole, instead of saving this to the end, just clarify for me, maybe just me, it's like 5th or 6th bullet down there, personnel costs for mental health staff were shifted Fund 467 during FY 2020. Be back beginning of FY 2024. Explain that. It was shifted because, and now it's going to be shifted back because.
Yes. So
I just think that's helpful for people to know.
You're absolutely right. Thank you for pointing that out. So during the last biennium budget, which covers fiscal year 20 and 21, the current fiscal year, we received flat funding. We were anticipated to receive flat funding, but the state provided student wellness and success funds. We already have a very robust mental health program in the district, and so we were able to shift costs out of the general fund into the student wellness and success fund to help offset the fact that we did not see an increase in state aid as we had originally anticipated with the last biennium budget. And so this forecast assumes that those student wellness and success funds will continue at least through fiscal year 23. And so in fiscal year 24, we're adding those salaries and benefits back into the general fund. So that was part of the state's flat funding for general operations, but then they provided the extra amount for the student wellness and success funds.
Thanks. I just think that sometimes people don't understand that, and you know, it takes a while for it to get into me as well. And I know this board is just very, and administration as well, just very passionate about supporting our students and staff, mental health, and just all of that. And it's not under reading, writing, arithmetic, right? And I know that, but it is such a critical piece for our students, staff to be supported in all the areas of life. So thank you. I just want to help that clarify.
Yep. So then Esser 1 and Esser 2, like we talked about, those are the amounts that we've used to move expenditures out of the general fund to help offset the revenue losses in the general fund from the Esser 1 and 2 funds. So for other expenditures, it includes pretty much everything else that we pay for in the district. We have purchase services. This purchase services is the line where the charter schools and the scholarship deductions come out of. We anticipate that to grow pretty substantially over the forecast period. Materials and supplies, we have our curriculum department does a nice job of preparing a long-range plan for textbook adoption materials and things like that. And so that's worked into the forecast. Same thing with capital outlay with our technology and equipment. Our technology department does a nice job of planning those out. And so that's all been worked into the forecast. Other objects includes purchase services from the ESCCO. And like we mentioned, the van drivers were shifted in fiscal year 20. They're now in-house and paid for out of salaries and benefits. We do operating transfers out every year for the Permanent Improvement Fund for turf replacement. And we do anticipate that our expenditures will return to our pre-pandemic levels going forward. Expenditure uncertainty around staffing needs, educational needs of students, economy and inflation, healthcare costs, legislative mandates, such as the voucher expansion. So we spend a little bit over $2 million annually on scholarships, which, like I mentioned before, we don't receive state funding for, and then another little over $6 million to charter schools. And so if that continues to grow, that could also affect our expenditures. Overall, looking at the changes in our fund balance, our unreserved fund balance is projected to be at a 46-day unreserved cash balance in 2025. We have the operating levy that we passed by the voters in November of 2019 that began collections in calendar year 21. We have our new elementary school to open in fiscal year 23, new middle school in 24, and any future levying planning will depend on what state funding does. And we, the forecast does assume flat state funding and would change if funding is reduced or increased. And that's all I have. Is everybody awake?
Yes, yes. I do have a question, more of a clarification question. You talked about the ESSER 3 funds and planning.
Mm-hmm.
Are there state expectations on where and how that money will be spent? Is that the plan you're speaking about?
Yeah, so it's not really state expectations. It's more from the federal government. So there is, they sent out an interim final rule, which has some requirements. We have to have meaningful public input in the plan for those funds. There's, I think, 20% that has to go to address learning loss. They didn't really talk about what that looks like specifically, but that's in the interim final rule. Also, we have to develop a continuity of services plan. So that's what we're working on. So we have 30 days to establish a continuity of services plan that has to be posted to our website. So we're working on that. And then we have, I think it's 90 days to have a full plan going forward for the ESSER 3 funds. It's August 20th, I think, was our date for ESSER 3. Yeah.
So that will have to be then submitted somewhere or shared with?
Yeah, well, we will submit it as part of the application through
Gotcha.
ODE.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any additional questions or discussion? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Marshall, would you please call the roll?
Dr. Nestor Baker,
Yes.
Mr. Velarda,
Yes.
Mrs. Altman,
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson,
Yes.
Mr. Bell.
Yes. And that motion carries. Next agenda item, 9.02, approve the financial report and investments for April 2021. May I please have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second?
Thank you. And Ms. Marshall, would you please share with us about this?
Yeah, so this is the April 30th month-end financials. For the general fund, we have year-to-date receipts of $187.3 million, year-to-date expenditures of $153.2 million. And we ended with an unencumbered general fund balance of $156.1 million. For all funds combined, we had year-to-date receipts of $247.8 million, year-to-date expenses of $231.1 million, and we ended with unencumbered fund balances for all funds combined at $276 million. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Marshall? Okay, hearing none, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Willard,
Yes.
Mrs. Altman,
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson,
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker,
Yes.
Mr. Bell.
Yes, that motion carries. Moving on to agenda item 10, our personnel consent.
Wait a second, Vaughn. I messed you up. I'm the one that asked to have an item pulled out, and I gave him the wrong one. It should be 10.12, which is reemployment of license. So I need to have that pulled out separately. And I apologize for giving you the wrong number.
Okay, so we'll consider 10. It helps if I unmute myself. So we will consider agenda items 10.01 through 10.11 and 10.13, and we'll consider 10.12 separately. May I please have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Massey, would you like to share with us about the personnel consent agenda?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for the time. President Bell, members of the board, Dr. Kellogg, Ms. Marshall, I would like to present for your consideration tonight the consent agenda. As you'll see, the items contained within, for the most part, or through the normal course of business. However, I do believe some items deserve to be highlighted. As you see, our student success coaches are being non-renewed at this time. Doesn't mean they did anything wrong, just the opposite. Did a tremendous job for us this year, obviously under very difficult circumstances, and we just want to thank them for their service and support to our student body and our learning community. You'll see many one-time payments. Obviously, as we get closer to the summer, those opportunities for our staff to have, to not only learn, but also have a positive impact on our students and learning community. You'll see a few corrections on our administrative staff for a few of those people who needed contract dates reset to reflect the actual year they work. We've had that in the past. You're also going to see all the license and classified contract renewals on this agenda, kind of a normal course of business for the May board agenda also. Other course of business, as usual and customary, is the extended time for our nurses and counselors as we head into the summer months in preparation for next school year. And then lastly, Nick Mcelwain, who I know all of you know, who has served as the Westerville Central High School principal for many years in an exemplary fashion. It will be taking on a new leadership role with the Westerville City Schools, and that being taking the reins from Dr. Ebrecht, and will be serving as our Director of Alternative Education and Assessment. So I want to congratulate him for that. That's all for the consent agenda. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions?
I just have one quick request related to the virtual student success coaches. So I want to thank them really for what they did this year, really helping us get through a tough year and kind of dropping in the middle of this pandemic. And Dr. Kellogg, I would love sometime to just have a report on that. I don't know if we're surveying them or interviewing them, but it's such a rare opportunity to have people drop into our schools for a year, albeit under odd circumstances, but to sort of get some learnings from them that we might be able to carry forward. So would love to see that if that's doable sometime.
Happy to do that. I think Dr. Hopkins actually collected some data from them late in the year that we could look at. And as we talked about Esser funds tonight in the future, some of those concepts might be revisited in the future under different circumstances. So we'll bring a report forward for the board.
Thank you.
I don't have a question, but I just want to say how glad I am that Nick Mcelwain is taking this position on. I think he's on here watching to make sure that the vote goes the way he hopes it does. So, but no,
He is
I'm
on tonight.
excited about it. I think it's going to be great. And I thank everyone who was engaged in their thoughtful approach to filling that position.
He is on tonight if any of the board members like to throw him a curveball.
Well, the only curveball is there anything, Mr. McElwain, the Big Mac, is there anything you would like to say?
Thank you, Reverend Bell. I want to thank Dr. Kellogg, Dr. Hopkins, the Board of Education, Ms. Marshall. Just want to thank everybody for this opportunity. It has been truly a blessing to serve not only Westerville City Schools, but the Westerville Central community and staff these past 7 years. And I'm just very grateful and thankful for this opportunity to serve our district and our community on a larger scale with this new position. So thank you all. I'm very excited to get started in this new position. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. We're very glad to have you on board. With that, Ms. Marshall, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Davidson,
Yes.
Mrs. Altman,
Yes.
Mr. Velarde,
Yes.
Dr. Baker,
Yes.
Mr. Bell.
Yes, and that motion carries. Agenda item 10.12, employment of classified. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved?
Second.
Are there,
Licensed.
I'm sorry, I can hear, I got an echo going on.
Yeah.
10.12 is reemployment of licensed individuals. And we've made a really big thing out of this tonight, so I probably should explain why I asked for it to be called out. 10.12, the reemployment of licensed individuals, deals with issuing contracts to people who already work for the district. And within that grouping of people, there are some administrators, and my daughter is listed in that group. I could argue that she's part of a class, and as such, I could vote on it. But I could argue, I think, a stronger argument that there is too much that is not part of being a class as defined by the Ethics Commission. And so I am going to abstain from that. And it is 10.12, reemployment of licensed.
Okay. Any questions or further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Marshall, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Davidson,
Yes.
Mr. Velarde,
Yes.
Mrs. Altman,
Yes.
Dr. Baker,
Abstain.
Mr. Bell.
Yes. And that motion carries. So we made it through that. Agenda item 11, old business. Agenda item 11.01, a final reading for policy 0142.3, orientation. May I please have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, Ms. Marshall, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Velarde,
Yes.
Mrs. Altman,
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson,
Yes.
Dr. Baker,
Yes.
Mr. Bell.
Yes, that motion carries. Moving on to agenda item 11.02, final reading for policy 0148, 12.01, board staff communications. May I please have a motion and a second?
So moved.
I second it.
Any further discussion? Ms. Marshall, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Altman,
Yes.
Dr. Nextbaker, sorry.
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson,
Yes.
Mr. Velarde,
Yes.
Mr. Bell.
Yes. And that motion carries. Moving on to agenda item 12, new business. Agenda item 12.01, new materials and revised courses of middle school math. And Mr. Reeves is with us. Would you like to share with us regarding this agenda item?
Yes, thank you, President Bell, Vice President Nestor Baker, Dr. Kellogg, members of the board. I'm actually pinch hitting tonight for Dr. Jennifer Knapp, who is our Director of Secondary Curriculum Instruction. She is, as we speak, cheering on her son, who's in the state semifinals in the state lacrosse tournament. So we wish her well. But tonight, in alignment with our curriculum and adoption cycle, our middle school math resources were up for review this year. Over the past 18 months, our middle school teachers have updated the courses of study to align with ODE's most recent revisions. Teachers have spent much of this past year reviewing materials and were guided by rubrics provided by the state of Ohio, as well as additional components they felt necessary for student success. Teachers selected Ready Math for grade 6, Intro to Math by HMH for grade 7, and decided to remain with College Prep Math, which we know as CPM, for grade 8. Teachers voted overwhelmingly for each of these resources selected. CPM, again, is a renewal that aligns strongly with preparing our students for Algebra 1. The grade 6 and 7 state standards lacked a strong coherence, and our teachers felt that each of the resources selected did the best job at trying to establish a cohesive approach. Reflected in each of the materials selected is a strong focus on discovery and the mathematical processes. Professional development will be provided to teachers before the start of school and through the process of implementation. A 6-year license for each of these resources is approximately $140,000. This work is facilitated by Michael Hewler, the curriculum specialist for secondary math, and all of the teachers, including all of the intervention specialists, were part of this work, all the teachers in the math department. Committee members that perhaps may still be on this call is Michael Hewler, Maria Soyson for 6th grade math, Melinda Amrine, 7th grade math, and Diane Blaine, 8th grade math. And if you have any questions regarding the resources for middle school math, they will be able to help you.
Any questions?
I do have one. I don't know if someone from the team would be just willing to talk about, obviously these all align with state standards, but given that they are, well, I guess, you know, not sort of coming as a package, right? They're different resources at each grade level, like how smooth we feel like it's going to be the transition from 6th grade to 7th grade curriculum to 8th grade curriculum. Like, do they take sort of the same approach, like thinking from the student side? If that question makes sense, or I can clarify if not.
Oh, that makes sense. The most recent adoption with CPM was the first time that the math curriculum ever had a unified program through middle school. So this is not unusual that we have different materials for different grades. As Mr. Reeves mentioned, the basic approach of each of these is the same. The lessons start with a problem. The students have discussion and discovery. We move to a conceptual understanding before we move to try and establish procedural fluency and applications. So they all follow the same basic pattern. The students are flexible as well. Remember, in middle school, they change teachers and approaches 6 times a day. So this is not, changing from one year to the next is not a big ask for our students.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, that's helpful for those of us who've had are aware of the recent situation, right, where it's a unified curriculum. Just wanted to, I was sure that you all had thought that through from the student side, but it's really helpful to hear that from your perspective, they'll work well together. So thanks for that.
Just wondering if the teachers who are still on the board meeting tonight, if they have anything that they would like to add to what Mr. Reeves said and Mr. Hewler said. Even though those were great comments, I always like to hear those teachers as well, especially since you have given up your evening to be with us online tonight.
I don't mind sharing. This is Maria Soyson, 6th grade math. I can tell you that we, last March, before the pandemic, 2 of us went and observed a school teaching using the Ready Math, and we were so impressed. So we did take the time to look at all the other resources, but we kept coming back to Ready Math and are excited about using it.
I can go next. I represent the 8th grade math teachers, and we really did look at all the different textbooks out there, but we kept coming back to CPM because especially in this year, the 8th grade textbook was the most diverse. It had the most examples that the majority of our students will be able to see themselves in a math problem and not a student they can't relate to. It's very friendly for our EL students. It also tied in with the, I'm reading my notes, contextual learning between the different disciplines. CPM was the only textbook out there where we could see things being pulled from social studies, and we could see things being pulled from ELA and being used in math examples. And so it's not a flashy textbook. It doesn't have a lot of glitz and glamour, but it has hand-drawn pictures that our students could very easily have reproduced themselves. It just met the needs of all of our students.
I can throw my comments in for 7th grade. This is Melinda Amrine, 7th grade math. We, again, spent a lot of time combing through all the different textbooks that were given to us, and we spent time with the representatives on meetings. We had lots of questions for them, and they were all very helpful. A lot of us came back to the HMH for a lot of the reasons that Mike mentioned. With the starting off, we like the style of the CPM with the kids starting off with an exploratory problem before we just jump into teaching, and this did a good job with that as well. I think the thing that stuck out the most with this particular text is they had a cohesive course for our accelerated strand, which is a big focus in the 7th grade. About a third of our students from each one of the middle schools are involved in that accelerated track, and this was the one company who had a really put together textbook that focused on that accelerated track, as well as having a very good example for the regular track 7th grade as well.
Thank you. I appreciate all that info from all 5 of you. Very helpful in fleshing it all out for us.
Yes, thank you. Hearing your perspectives helps a great deal. And so thank you for all of the time that you have devoted to making these selections for us and for our students. Thank you. Agenda item 12.02, the new middle school science materials. Mr. Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Our middle school science resources were up for review as well again this year. Most vendors align their materials with NGSS, which stands for Next Generation Science Standards. They do not align, however, very well with Ohio's learning standards, particularly in middle school. Teachers have used Science Fusion for the past 6 years, and the online component and workbook agreement is set to expire at the end of this particular school year. Based on our increased use of the additional components in Fusion that were underutilized before the pandemic and no better resources surfaced, the team decided to renew with Science Fusion for the next 5 years. The cost will be approximately $250,000 over that time. Teachers are also making recommendations to remain with Gizmos, which is an online simulation resource for the next 3 years. Teachers truly felt that these current programs provided them what the students needed to be successful in middle school science, and that they were fully utilizing all of the components of Fusion, particularly over the past 15 months. This work was facilitated by science curriculum specialist Lindsay Manzo, who I'm hopeful is still on this call with us tonight, and representatives from every building and grade level for any questions the board may have over the middle school science materials.
Any questions?
I'll ask the same thing that I asked before. This time ask if Lindsay has anything she would like to add to that clear information from Mr. Reeves.
Thank you, Dr. Nestor Baker. I'll just be brief. We are staying with, for middle school, we are staying with Science Fusion that we've had before, and the teachers felt very strongly when posed with the question, would simply changing the textbook, would simply changing the publisher change teaching practice or change student achievement? And we said no. And there were very few other options out there. And one other one that we looked at was very similar. And because we said no to that question, we couldn't justify switching everything, having students learn new platforms, teachers learn new platforms for something that our teachers and students had become really accustomed with these last, basically over this last year. And we felt very strongly between that and our Explore Learning gizmos that helped really, we relied on a lot because of they were online simulations, that moving forward with those for the next 5 years was in the best interest of our students.
Thank you. That's an excellent question to have couched your discussions around. Thanks a lot.
Dr. Nestor Baker, I just think that it's important to point out that the science folks approached it in a very scientific way. So will it make a difference? Will it improve student achievement? No, no. There you go. I'm pleased with that. I think that's wonderful.
Any others? Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item 12.03, the new AP statistics materials. Mr. Reeves.
Yes. So in alignment with our curriculum adoption cycle, our AP stats teachers are recommending new resources. All of the AP statistics teachers met over the course of the past year to select new resources. And as this course is developed by the College Board, the district selects materials that come from a list provided by the College Board. While the College Board does not state that the list they provide is not exhaustive, the books on that list do meet the course audit curricular requirements, and teachers felt confident that the books supported the content and our students' needs. Our teachers recommending the Practice of Statistics 6E. The cost of this resource for 6 years is approximately $20,000. Once again, Michael Hewler and Amy Ward, one of the members of the committee, are with the call to answer any questions the board may have.
Any questions?
And I'd be interested in hearing from Amy and from Mike about their thoughts. And I actually looked at the list of participants to see if they were still on here. So sorry, Amy, I don't know if you knew you were called out or not, but that's the way it goes.
Again, the author of the book that the teachers chose is highly placed within the exam and course development for the AP statistics. So the teachers felt that that is a good way to help them understand what's expected for their students when they go to sit and take the test.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? No statistics questions?
Hey, Mike.
Analysis on the data that was collected.
I was going to ask what the probability for improved student performance was going to be based on the change in textbook, because the science people went in that direction, so I thought the math people should go in that direction. We could do a regression analysis for us and bring it forward later.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being with us this evening. Moving on to agenda item 12.04, new high school science materials. Mr. Reeves.
Yes. So physical science, biology, and honors biology materials are next up for review. Obviously, it's a big year in science and math in middle and now high school. As a reminder to the board, these courses were approved earlier this year when we transitioned them from being separate semester courses into a single year long, one singular course over the course of the year. Teachers met this past year to look at the materials and are recommending to utilize Schoology and supplemental materials, including gizmos and other online simulations. Similar to chemistry and physics, the focus is largely on the application of science, so purchasing a textbook was not deemed really necessary. It is fully aligned to Ohio's learning standards and uses our current McGraw-Hill resources, guided notes, essential readings, Cornell notes, labs, practices, and handouts, reviews, and the assessments. So the Schoology course was built by the teachers and will continue to evolve as we go, and which I think makes it far more flexible and in the control in the hands of our staff members. And so that's the materials that we are evolving to. Any questions for Mrs. Manzo, who I'm hoping is still with us?
Any questions?
I can just share.
Okay.
I can just share that the philosophy with really utilizing Schoology as our platform, as Mr. Reeves mentioned, it really allows for flexibility, especially when you think about biology. A lot can change in 5 years. And having Schoology allows us to keep our resources and our activities more relevant and more applicable to what our students are doing. Also, there are the next generation science standards. Ohio's sort of somewhat aligned, but not always and not really. But one thing that is the same no matter what are the scientific practices. And one of the reasons that we really said no to a textbook at this point, because we already have something and we can continue to use those resources. We didn't need to change it. But the shift in scientific thinking of it's not just learning about science, but it's teaching the students how to figure out science. So it's that from learning about to figuring out. Philosophy that really felt that what we were able to build in Schoology was going to make a lot more of that happen than what you would just get in a textbook.
If I could ask a quick question of Ms. Manzo, thank you so much. I'm just wondering, this is just my own ignorance, is this the first time that we've done this, where we have teachers have come together to really create the course, for high school science curriculum on Schoology, or have we done it before?
We have done it before. We currently, most recently, we did it with our chemistry, honors chemistry, and physics courses 2 years ago. Same kind of thing. Our teachers really felt that science didn't happen in a book, that students need to be doing things. And rather than purchase a textbook, they have built everything in Schoology so that all of our teachers have access to it, and it's living and breathing. So when we find that something isn't working, we can change out and put something new in, or as we find new things, we can always add to it. And these teachers, the biology and the physical science teachers, felt very similarly to that.
Great, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Any additional questions, comments? Thank you again for being here this evening. I think, to me, that is exciting, helping to assist our students really come to enjoy learning about the sciences. I think is very important. So student engagement is crucial. So thank you all very much for all of the hard work that you have put into developing this kind of a curriculum for our students. Moving on to agenda item 13. Let's see here. Agenda item 13.01, donations. May I please have a motion and a second to accept these donations?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? We certainly want to thank everyone that is included on this agenda item for all of your contributions and assistance. Without your help, we would not be able to do all that we do for our students, staff, and for families. So thank you. Ms. Marshall, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Velarda,
Yes.
Dr. Nussbaker,
Yes.
Mrs. Altman,
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson,
Yes.
Mr. Bell.
Yes. Motion carries. Agenda item 13.02, resolution declaring impracticality for transportation. May I please have a motion and a second?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Snyder, would you share with us about this, please?
Certainly. Good evening, President Bell, Vice President Dr. Nestor Baker, members of the board, Dr. Kellogg, and Ms. Marshall. Before you this evening is a resolution declaring impracticality to transport identified students. Ohio law allows for public school districts to determine impracticality of transportation after consideration of a number of factors, such as the cost of providing transportation and the number of students requesting transportation. On March 11th in 2019, the board passed a resolution declaring 2 students impractical for transportation, and before you this evening is a list of 4 additional students that have been deemed impractical to transport. Our Office of Purchasing and Logistics has evaluated each of the listed private school students per the requirements of section 3327.02 of the Ohio Revised Code and declared the listed students impractical to transport. Approving this resolution would allow the district to offer payment in lieu of transportation in the manner provided per the Ohio Revised Code. The payment in lieu amount is determined by the state of Ohio. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have this evening.
Any questions? Okay, thank you for being with us and sharing this evening.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Ms. Marshall, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Davidson,
Yes.
Dr. Nussbaker,
Yes.
Mrs. Altman,
Yes.
Mr. Velarda,
Yes.
Mr. Bell.
Yes. That motion carries. Moving on to agenda item 13.03, resolution to approve the application for one-time records disposal according to the records retention schedule. May I please have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Marshall, would you share with us about this, please?
Yes, so another one of those accountability measures that us public school districts have. We are required to follow the Open Meetings Act, the Sunshine Law, and all those great things. So with that comes our records retention schedule. So every year we box up things in accordance with our records retention schedule and prepare them for disposition. And so we need the board's approval before we can dispose of them. We're ready to have the truck come and pick them up. So just let me know.
So this is a resolution of shredding. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, it is.
Shredding resolution.
Yes, it is.
Awesome.
Any questions? Okay, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Velarde?
Yes.
Mrs. Altman?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Bell?
Yes. And that motion carries. And moving on to an exciting one, agenda item 13.04, student candidates for graduation from Westerville Central, North, and South High Schools, pending completion of all local and state requirements. May I please have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second. Oh, sorry. I take it back. You go second.
Oh, okay, I will second it.
I retract my second.
Dr. Kellogg, save us from ourselves.
This is kind of fun because I know there's a couple board members have a vested interest in this vote, and delaying it could create some interesting dining table conversations this evening. But that said, I got to open the evening with the opportunity to say farewell and good luck to our retirees. And we get to really close our evening by saying farewell and good luck to our graduates. So before you use a list of our graduates who are at this point are eligible for graduation, we're looking forward to a wonderful Saturday morning, afternoon, and early evening at South, North, and Central. Weather, knock on wood, is looking promising. So we're really looking forward to as close to being the kind of graduation we love to have as possible without breaking any Ohio orders. So I turn it over to you for your vote and present to you the members of the class of 2021 from our 3 wonderful high schools.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Kellogg or further discussion?
Just congratulations to our board member families. As you send your wonderful seniors off onto their next adventure, congratulations to them and to you, and job well done.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I have earned each one of these great Ms. Marshall, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Altman?
Yes.
Mr. Bell?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes.
Mr. Velarde?
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes.
And motion carries. We have graduates for Saturday. Moving on to agenda item 14.01, public comments. We have not received any. So moving on to agenda item 15.01, board comments. Who would like to begin this evening? Oh, no.
Okay.
Not in.
I just one more time want to wish our retirees just a healthy and happy retirement and thank them again for their service and the impact they've made on the lives of the children and our community. It was greatly appreciated. And then to our graduates, congratulations. I am super excited to do these graduations in the stadium. I think what a great, unique way to end the year. Nancy's laughing. She's going to be like, if it's really hot, you're not going to be so excited. But I am. I think there's a certain nostalgia, like graduating from your own school at your school. So, thank you to Jill and all the others that planned this. And it's going to be great. It's going to be a great day. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davidson. I'll go next. This is the month of May is Asian American Pacific Islander Month, and so I certainly want to pause for a moment to celebrate that and to thank all of our Asian American Pacific Islander brothers and sisters in the American family for all of the rich contributions that you have made to the history of our country. It is a heritage that contributes to the mosaic that is the United States of America. And so I wanted to mention that. Coming up this weekend is Memorial Day. And so we also want to thank all of those who have served our country, and particularly those that have made the ultimate sacrifice for our country so that we may enjoy the many liberties and benefits that we all have on a day-to-day basis. So we want to recognize and thank all of our veterans and all of those who have served our country. I would like to extend a special thank you to Mr. King at Central High School and his class on his race and ethnic studies class for the invitation to come in and be a part of their discussion and to have the opportunity to view the presentations that the final presentations that the students made. Their work was outstanding. Their questions for us were thought-provoking and very well thought out. So I just want to thank you thank you, Mr. King, for engaging our students in that way. Everybody that I talked to, of the students, all of the students that are a part of that class thought it was tremendous, and said that it was one of the best classes that they've had throughout their years in Westerville schools. So thank you for the opportunity to come in, listen, and be in conversation with both you and the students. Couple more things real quick. I want to thank all of the administrators, all of the teachers, all of the staff for all that you have done to make this school year possible. We are definitely on a countdown now, 2 days of school left. And so we want to say thank you for helping us to navigate this very unusual year. All of your hard work, dedication, and contributions we appreciate you more than words can truly express. So thank you. If we can just now make it through 2 more days, we'll have this year behind us. And finally, to all of the graduates, I want to say congratulations to each and every one of you, and to each and every one of your families and support systems as well. Job well done. Congratulations. And we look forward to hearing some of the great things that we know you're going to do as you leave the nest and fly out into the world to make your contributions in the world. Thank you all very, very much. Okay.
Well said, President Bell. I appreciate you bringing up the Memorial Day weekend. I think the convergence of Memorial Day and what that can mean, and the graduation and what that can mean, I think that convergence actually is pretty important for our students to reflect just a little bit about what has gone on before them and the road that has been paved for them, and for them to reflect on, the words are still very powerful about not always asking what the country or what somebody can do for me, but what can I do to serve others. And I know many of these graduates. I'm very blessed to know many of these graduates, and it is a stellar class. It is a stellar class, and just excited to see them launching out. And I think the fact that we talked about the retirements as well, what a blessing those folks have continued to be through the years. And I just pray, I think it was Ms. Davidson who said, just really Pray that they have wonderful, healthy years, and please come back and plug in because we could use that experience. So I'm very grateful for that. And if I may, just two very brief personal items. The first one is I'd like to wish my father a happy 99th birthday. So a happy birthday, 99 years. We had an all-you-can-eat pasta party, and he ate more pasta than the rest of us. Apparently, that's how you stay alive, 99 years. And he's never had anybody say happy birthday to him over a Board of Education's meeting. So happy birthday, and I apologize for the hands waving. I got that from him. The other is a personal note, and I just wrote a few sentences so that I wouldn't go preaching, Pastor Bell. I would just keep it here. It has been an honor and a privilege to serve this Westerville community as a member of the Board of Education. And I still find within myself the passion and the interest and the energy to be a part of a Board of Education team, because it's never about one of us. It's about all of us. And I would like to continue to work toward the success of every student, the supporting of our staff members, those up front and those who are way behind the scenes, and the wise and prudent use of our tax dollars. We talked a lot about that tonight. So I'm just simply announcing, no politicking, just simply announcing that I will be seeking an additional term on the Westerville Board of Education, and it's just been my honor to serve and would like to continue to do that. So that's just my brief announcement of President Bell. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. And happy birthday to Mr. Villardo, the big Mr. Villardo. Dr. Nestor Baker.
My turn. Although after the comments that have been made, it's difficult to find anything better to add. But I really like, Rick, what you said about the convergence of Memorial Day and graduation. And I would add another piece to that, the convergence of our public institutions with all of that. As we think about the public good, what all of us do, whether we are graduating from high school or we're a child yet to experience all those years of school, whether we're retiring, whether we're active in the workforce, whether we are serving or have served in our military, whatever the case may be, we are all engaged in the public good. And that's really pretty special when you think about it. And tonight, you've kind of had an encapsulation of that. We have obviously a very transparent public meeting where we talk and we laugh and we get a lot of business done. And we do it in a highly transparent manner. You got a sense of some of the accountability strictures that make sure that the public good is well represented. As we talked about finances, as we talked about transportation, as we talked about curriculum. And there is little more important than curriculum in a school district. And we are very fortunate to have some remarkable educators who are involved in the development and the implementation of curriculum. So tonight we saw the transparency of that. So we have a transparent, highly public, highly engaged institution. And it, as all of our public institutions, appears to have an incredible bedrock. And yet, like any rock, it can fracture. And we need to do all that we can to make sure that we protect and serve our public institutions so that our public institutions serve all of us as part of the public good. So it's really kind of a special night when you think about all of those confluences that occurred tonight, and we think about all of our young people stepping forward. And also, Rick, it's a special night for you to make that announcement. I'm glad to hear it. I offer you all my support. And away we go on that next portion of what it means to be part of a public institution. Thank you for all of this time.
Okay, thank you all very much. Moving on to agenda item 15 point, I'm sorry, agenda item 16, dates, times, and locations.
Well, I can always say something.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right, or at least I'll ask a question. No, I mean, it's all been said already, so I'm sort of fine with just letting it move on, except I guess I will say that, you know, it's 2 more days, and I know a lot of people, for some people, they're counting down, they can't wait till the next 2 days are over, and there are some people who are really wanting to savor these 2 days, and I guess I would just wish for everybody, teachers, staff, administrators, students, that these 2 days, you know, are really great, and the culmination of just lots of craziness, but I'm hoping that these 2 days can be something that people really cherish and hang on to as the end of the school year. So, and I think, you know, I'd been thinking about Memorial Day and graduation too, and our graduates go on to do all kinds of wonderful things, and that confluence always just reminds me to be especially grateful for those who move into the armed services. So, thank you.
Thank you. I apologize. I'm sorry. Now, moving on to agenda item 16.01, dates, times, and locations of the next meeting. The board will meet in a regular session on Monday, June the 14th, 2021 at 6:00 p.m. at the Early Learning Center, 936 East Wind Drive, Westerville, Ohio, 43081. Agenda item 17.01, adjournment. May I please have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Marshall, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Willard?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes.
Mrs. Altman?
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Bell?
Yes. Motion carries. We are adjourned.